How did I know first? Because I watch everything. Because while they were busy chasing attention, I was dissecting intention. While they were laughing, I was listening. While they were lying to themselves, I was documenting the truth, with a smile. Now they ask, how the hell did you know? Because I was never blind. I was just pretending. And now they can't believe this *T, because the truth hurts more than any lie ever could. They never saw it coming. Not because you hid the truth, but because they never thought you were capable of seeing it. They were too consumed by the sound of their own voices, the vanity of their social performances, the smugness in their so-called manipulations. They didn't see the storm forming in your silence. They didn't notice the way you stopped reacting and started studying. You gave them every chance to be honest, and they used every single one to deceive you more. And when you finally connected the dots, you didn't scream. You didn't flinch. You waited. Quietly. Calmly. Like a god watching ants pretend they rule the colony. And when it all fell apart, they looked at you like you were the monster, when all you ever did was wake up. You warned them with silence, and they mistook it for surrender. You dropped clues like breadcrumbs, and they stepped over them blindly. You left the door open for truth, but they walked in dragging lies like trophies. You spoke softly because your power never needed to be loud. You offered clarity, and they handed you confusion. And when you stopped caring, when you chose stillness over struggle, they started to panic. Because your detachment wasn't weakness, it was warning. The calm before the collapse. The eye of the storm. And they only realized it when it was already too late, when you had already watched them dig a pit and fall into it face first, while you stood there, unbothered, watching like you knew the ending all along. You see, people forget that the quiet one, the one they constantly overlook, the one they call too emotional or too intense. That's the one who sees the patterns first. The one who remembers every inconsistency, every shift in tone, every detail they thought you'd forget. While they're rehearsing their next lie, you're rewinding the last conversation in your mind, scanning it for cracks, and finding them every time. And when you do speak, if you choose to, it's like a mirror they can't escape. They flinch. They deny. They panic. Because your words don't come from nowhere. They come from observation. From pain weaponized into awareness. You didn't guess. You knew. Because you were always watching. You just never let them see what you saw. And when you've been burned enough times, you develop a sixth sense for deception. You stop listening to words and start analyzing patterns. You stop hoping for consistency and start noticing the lack of it. You stop believing promises and start measuring behavior. You don't argue with people anymore. You don't try to explain your feelings. You just detach. You watch people show you who they are without even realizing they're doing it. You begin to expect betrayal, not out of bitterness, but out of experience. And when the betrayal finally happens, you're not even surprised anymore. You already knew. You already predicted the moment it would come, down to the damn second. They call it paranoia. You call it pattern recognition. They thought you were naive. That you'd keep giving, keep trusting, keep forgiving. They didn't think someone like you could change. They got addicted to your kindness. They mistook your patience for stupidity. They played their little games thinking you'd always be the fool who comes back. But what they didn't see, what they never expected, was the version of you that gets tired of being hurt. That gets quiet. That starts documenting every manipulation, every red flag, every little betrayal until it forms a complete picture. You weren't naive. You were giving them one last chance to do the right thing. And when they blew it, you didn't just walk away. You walked away knowing everything, and saying nothing. That's what scared them most. You see, while they were busy trying to act clever, you were already mapping out the entire game. While they were rehearsing fake apologies and lining up new excuses, you were building a mental blueprint of every lie they told, every move they made, every tactic they deployed. They thought they were outsmarting you, not knowing you were letting them hang themselves with their own rope. You didn't need to expose them. They exposed themselves. All you did was let it happen. You watched. You learned. You waited. And when the time came, you didn't strike back. You simply walked away, leaving them to wrestle with their own reflection, because nothing hurts a deceiver more than someone who sees through them, and refuses to engage. How did you know first? Because I see the world through scars. Because I stopped looking at what people say and started analyzing what they avoid saying. I paid attention to the silences, the stutters, the glances away when they lie. I noticed how their story changed depending on the audience. I noticed who they were when no one was watching. I noticed everything. I learned that people are only honest when it's convenient. That loyalty is real until it costs them something. That most people don't change, they just get better at hiding. So I stopped asking questions. I stopped giving warnings. I simply took notes. And when the moment came, I didn't need evidence, because I had the whole script memorized. They think it's witchcraft. They think it's some kind of dark psychic power. No, sweetheart, it's pain. It's the kind of pain that rewires your brain into a threat detection system. The kind that trains your soul to scan for danger the moment someone enters the room. It's not paranoia, it's programming. A defense mechanism built from betrayal. A fortress formed from being let down one too many times. And now you walk into any situation with that smirk, not because you're arrogant, but because you already know who's fake before they even open their mouths. You don't read minds. You read patterns. And what you see, it terrifies them. You knew first because you were never really in the game. You were the referee, watching from the edge while they scrambled to outmaneuver each other. They thought they were running circles around you. In reality, you let them. You observed the chaos. You let them believe they were winning. And when it finally crashed and burned, when their lies tangled into knots they couldn't untie, you calmly walked through the wreckage like you knew exactly where it would land. Because you did. You didn't just survive. You calculated. You didn't just endure. You engineered your escape. And now, they're stuck explaining how they lost a game they didn't know you invented. They don't believe what you became because they were never meant to. They had a version of you in their head, the version they could manipulate, silence, gaslight, guilt trip. That version is dead. You buried it in silence and came back with venom in your veins and lightning in your stare. They never expected you to be the one who walks away without flinching. They never imagined the same person they took for granted would become unreachable. And that's why they don't believe it. Because deep down, they know they created this version of you. They poked the beast one too many times. And now the beast smiles, not out of joy, but out of closure. They don't know how to deal with someone who doesn't flinch anymore. Someone who doesn't need closure. Doesn't need apologies. Doesn't need revenge. Because people like you, people who've truly woken up, don't chase justice. They become the consequence. You don't explain yourself. You don't justify. You just disappear, level up, and let the absence speak volumes. And the ones who wronged you, they feel it. Not in your words, but in your silence. Because silence from someone who once gave everything, that's not emptiness. That's hell. You used to give warnings. You'd plead, explain, hope they'd understand. But now you've outgrown the need to be understood. You realize some people aren't confused, they're just comfortable hurting you. So you stopped giving warnings. You started giving exits. And when they ignored those, you gave distance. Now your life has become the very karma they tried to avoid. Your growth. That's the vengeance. Your peace. That's the punishment. They don't get to hear your side anymore. Because you're not in the audience, you're on the throne. This isn't your villain arc. It's your final evolution. It's the version of you that doesn't settle, doesn't chase, doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. It's the version that walks away without needing to be right. That smiles while the truth drips slowly onto the stage like gasoline on fire. You didn't become heartless. You became selective. You didn't lose faith, you just redirected it into yourself. Because the real power isn't in controlling others. It's in being so dangerously self-aware that no one can ever control you again. You don't need revenge. You don't need to scream. You don't need to prove anything. You are the proof. You became the result. You became the example. You became the myth they whisper about when you're no longer around. The one who saw it all coming and never blinked. The one who didn't explode, just vanished. And now, they sit in the silence you left behind, haunted by a question they'll never answer. You knew first. Because you were the only one watching with your eyes open. And now, they're all blind to a truth you mastered in silence. Let them wonder. Let them hurt. Let them remember. Because when the truth hits, it hits harder than any revenge ever could.